Cher. There's a moment in every great interview where the host realizes they've made a terrible mistake. The lights are on, the cameras are rolling, the audience is watching, and somehow, the person sitting across from them has completely taken over the room. That moment happened repeatedly throughout one of the most unfiltered careers in Hollywood history. Not because anyone planned it, not because a publicist mapped it out, but because the woman in the chair simply refused to pretend. This is the story of how Cher walked into some of television's most carefully controlled spaces and casually set them on fire. What separates Cher from nearly every celebrity of her era isn't the records or the movies or the outfits, though all of those could fill their own documentary. It's something far rarer. She never learned to perform sincerity, because she was always just being sincere. While other stars were carefully packaging themselves for public consumption, Cher was already saying the quiet part loudly, comfortably, and often hilariously. By the time most hosts figured out what she'd just said, the audience was already laughing, and she'd moved on to the next thing. She was in her early 20s when the world started paying attention, and even then, the pattern was clear. She didn't soften the landing. She didn't fake the smile. And the more uncomfortable a room got, the harder and more precisely she landed the joke. That combination, total honesty delivered with comic timing, turned every interview into something unpredictable and often unforgettable. Take the famous David Letterman situation, which didn't start as a single conversation but as a 4-year standoff. For 4 years, Letterman's team sent invitations. By some accounts, they reached out at least 81 separate times before she finally agreed to appear. When she finally walked out onto that stage, the audience could feel the weight of all that history. This wasn't just another booking. It was a showdown that one side had been waiting years to have. She arrived smelling incredible, which Letterman noticed immediately. The kind of nervous icebreaker a host uses when they're not entirely sure the next hour is going to go in their favor. Cher, naturally, mentioned the fragrance. One was cheap, she said. It was called Ritz. She mixed it with something else. Completely unbothered by the question, completely at ease, already in control of a room she'd barely entered. Then came the part everyone remembered. Letterman, attempting to set a warm, self-deprecating tone, asked why she'd avoided the show for so long. What had changed? Cher looked at him with the kind of patience a teacher reserves for a student who already knows they're wrong, and told him the truth. She had always thought he was an ass. The audience erupted. Letterman, to his credit, laughed. But he also started doing the thing nervous hosts do, which is try to translate what just happened into something more polite. He suggested that surely what she'd said was that she thought he was an awfully nice fellow. Something like an astronaut, Cher clarified, keeping a completely straight face. But she hadn't just come to land one punch and leave. She'd watched him interview people. She'd seen how he operated, how charming he could be when he liked a guest, and how quickly the temperature in the room could drop when he didn't. She told him this plainly, with the same calm delivery she used for everything. When you have that kind of platform, she pointed out, you can essentially do whatever you want to the people sitting across from you. And the audience watches regardless. Letterman laughed again, but it was a different kind of laugh, slightly shorter, slightly less certain. The dynamic shifted fast. By the time she was openly asking whether he was okay mid-interview, the host famous for rattling celebrities was visibly stumbling through his own show, while Cher appeared to be genuinely enjoying herself. That energy didn't stay contained to one host. On another occasion, she appeared opposite Graham, whose warm and enthusiastic introduction began unraveling almost immediately. He arrived armed with facts, details about her life and career that he seemed eager to present to her, as if she might have forgotten them. Cher spotted the awkwardness instantly. She pointed out, with some amusement, that the whole thing felt less like a conversation and more like someone reading from a questionnaire. If you already have the facts, she noted, why are you asking me? Graham pushed forward, clearly hoping momentum would save him. It didn't. The introduction grew longer and more tangled, and while the other guests on the couch waited politely, Cher did not. She identified the weakest point in his setup, hit it once, and turned the host's confusion into the biggest laugh of the night. When someone observed that her look that evening